Mr. Ade was a well-known trader in Abuja. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a calm way of speaking. People in the market respected him because he was fair and honest in business. At home, he lived with his wife, Bizi, and their 2 children. Their house was small but full of peace. Every evening, Bizi prepared warm food and waited for her husband to return from work. They had been married for 15 years, and though they had faced struggles, they stood together through them all. But lately, Ade had begun to change. He started coming home late and spending more time on his phone. Bizi noticed but did not say anything. She only prayed quietly in her heart, hoping her husband was just tired from work. What she did not know was that Ade had started seeing another woman, a young lady named Zainab. Zainab was a beautiful woman in her late 20s. She worked in a small fashion boutique near Ade's trading shop. She had a bright smile, smooth skin, and a laugh that drew attention wherever she went. Ade first met her one afternoon when he stopped by her shop to buy a gift for his wife's birthday. Zainab had helped him choose a lovely necklace, and they had talked for a while. Ade liked her charm and how she listened when he spoke. That first meeting was innocent, but it opened a door he should never have walked through. At first, their meetings were simple. Ade would stop by her shop, and they would talk about work, family, and life in the city. Zainab was kind and funny, and Ade found comfort in her attention. He began to feel young again, free from the worries of home and responsibility. Soon, he started buying her small gifts, perfume, shoes, and even a phone. Zainab loved the attention and began to expect more. She told herself that Ade truly cared for her, that he loved her. Ade, on the other hand, told himself it was only friendship. He knew he loved his wife and children. But the more time he spent with Zainab, the more difficult it became to stay away. One evening, after a long day, he took Zainab out for dinner. The city lights shimmered through the restaurant windows, and music played softly in the background. Zainab looked at him with warm eyes and said, "Ade, when will you tell your wife about me?" Ade froze. He had no answer. He smiled weakly and said, "Zainab, it's not that easy. I don't want to hurt anyone." But deep down, he knew he was already hurting someone, his wife, who still waited for him at home. Zainab was not satisfied. She wanted more. She wanted to be seen with him in public. She wanted him to promise a future. When Ade hesitated, she grew restless. She started calling him more often, sending messages at night, and getting upset when he didn't reply quickly. Ade began to feel trapped between 2 worlds, the peace of his home and the thrill of his secret. One Sunday morning, Bizi noticed Ade dressing up earlier than usual. "You're going to the shop today?" she asked. He nodded quickly. "Yes, there's a supplier I need to meet," he said. She smiled softly and said, "All right, come home early. The children want to watch a movie with you." Ade nodded and left, but instead of going to the market, he drove across town to meet Zainab. She was waiting by the roadside, wearing a bright yellow dress and carrying a small purse. "You look beautiful," Ade said, trying to sound cheerful. She smiled, but her eyes held a question. They spent the day together, walking in a quiet park and talking. But the joy that Ade once felt was no longer there. Every laugh from Zainab reminded him of his wife's smile. Every word she spoke reminded him of the promises he had broken. He started to see the cracks in the life he was building with lies. Zainab, however, was falling deeper. She believed Ade would soon leave his wife for her. She told her friend Halima that she was sure about it. "Ade loves me. He said I make him happy," she said proudly. But Halima only shook her head. "Zainab, a married man will never leave his wife. Don't fool yourself." Still, Zainab refused to listen. She had grown used to the comfort Ade brought, the expensive gifts, the attention, the sweet words. She began to imagine herself as his wife, living in his house, driving his car, wearing gold jewelry. The dream was sweet, but it was only a dream. Meanwhile, Ade's guilt grew heavier each day. At night, when he lay beside Bizi, he could not sleep. She would ask gentle questions. "Is everything all right? You look tired these days." He would force a smile and say, "Work has been tough." But he knew the real reason. He had lost his peace. One evening, Bizi prepared his favorite meal and waited for him. The children had gone to bed, and she sat quietly at the table. When Ade finally came home, she greeted him with a smile, but he looked uneasy. "You haven't been yourself," she said softly. "If something is wrong, you can tell me." Ade looked into her eyes and felt a sting in his chest. She was the same woman who had stood by him when he had nothing, who had prayed with him through hard times. He wanted to tell her everything but couldn't. He only said, "I'm fine, Beezy. Don't worry." Later that night, Zainab called. "Ade, are you coming tomorrow? I miss you," she said. He sighed and told her he was busy. She grew angry. "You're avoiding me now? After all I've done for you?" Ade closed his eyes. The very thing that once excited him now felt like a heavy chain. The next day, he sat in his car for a long time, thinking. He realized he had started something that could destroy everything he had built. He remembered his children's laughter, his wife's prayers, his home. For the first time, he felt afraid of losing it all. But Zainab wasn't ready to let go. She believed she had come too far to back down. She told herself that love was worth fighting for, even if it meant breaking another woman's heart. She started planning how to make Ade stay. She didn't know that the same love she clung to would soon turn against her. And so, as the sun set over Abuja, two hearts sat restless, one heavy with guilt, the other burning with desire. Both chasing something that could never bring peace. It was only the beginning of a story that would change them forever. Zainab's heart began to grow restless. She was used to hearing from Ade every day, sometimes every hour, but lately, his calls had become shorter. Sometimes he would not call at all. When she sent him messages, he replied with only 1 or 2 words. She told herself he was busy, but deep inside, she feared he was pulling away. At first, she tried to stay calm. She dressed beautifully, posted pictures of herself on social media, and waited for his attention. But the silence from Ade grew louder. One afternoon, she called him 5 times, and he didn't answer. When he finally picked up, his voice was tired. "Zainab, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you later," he said. She frowned and said softly, "You always say that. You don't have time for me anymore." Ade sighed. "Please, don't start again. I'm just busy." He ended the call quickly, leaving her angry and hurt. She stared at her phone for a long time, her hands trembling. She had given this man her heart. How could he now act like she didn't matter? That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept spinning. "Maybe he's with his wife," she whispered to herself. "Maybe he's laughing with her right now." The thought made her chest tighten. She felt jealous, angry, and afraid of losing him. By morning, she decided to do something. The next day, she went to Ade's office without telling him. She dressed nicely and carried a small food basket. The receptionist recognized her and smiled politely. "Good afternoon, madam. Do you have an appointment?" Zainab smiled back. "No, I'm just surprising him." When Ade saw her enter, his eyes widened in shock. He quickly stood up from his desk. "Zainab, what are you doing here?" he whispered. "I told you never to come here." She smiled sweetly and said, "I missed you. I brought you lunch." He glanced around nervously. His assistant was pretending not to watch, but everyone in the office could feel the tension. Ade gently took the basket from her and whispered harshly, "You can't just show up like this. People know I'm married." Zainab's smile faded. "So you're ashamed of me now?" she asked softly. He sighed deeply. "Zainab, please. Not here." She felt embarrassed and walked out quickly, tears filling her eyes. That evening, she didn't answer his calls. She wanted him to feel the same pain she felt. She wanted him to chase her, but when her phone stayed silent, her anger returned. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them grew. Ade tried to focus on his work and his family, but his guilt followed him everywhere. When he looked at Beezy, he saw her calm eyes and wondered how long he could keep his secret. He prayed silently each night, asking for forgiveness, but he could not bring himself to end things with Zainab completely. Beezy, on her part, knew something was wrong. Ade had started sleeping on one side of the bed, always turning his back to her. He ate less and smiled less. Sometimes, when his phone rang, he would rush to the other room to answer. She noticed the perfume smell on his clothes, one she did not own. Still, she said nothing. She had learned that silence sometimes reveals more than words. One afternoon, Beezy visited Ade's office to surprise him with lunch. The secretary hesitated before saying, "He stepped out a few minutes ago, madam. He said he had a short meeting." Beezy smiled politely and left, but as she drove past the corner street, she saw something that made her heart stop. Ade, standing beside his car, speaking to a woman she did not recognize. The woman laughed and touched his arm. Beezy did not cry. She simply drove past slowly, her hands tight on the steering wheel. That night, she served dinner as usual. Ade talked about his day, pretending nothing was wrong. Beezy only nodded and smiled faintly. Later, when he went to bed, she sat quietly in the living room, whispering a prayer. "Lord, give me wisdom. I will not fight. You will fight for me." Meanwhile, Zainab's obsession grew stronger. She began following Ade's routine. She knew when he left home, when he arrived at the office, even when he took his lunch break. Sometimes, she would send messages saying, "I saw your car today. Why didn't you stop to say hello?" It frightened Ade. He started avoiding places where she might appear. His friend Kunnel noticed the change. One evening, as they sat together, Kunnel said, "My brother, you look troubled. What's going on?" Ade shook his head. "It's nothing serious." But Kunnel pressed, "Is it about that young lady I saw with you months ago?" Ade froze. Kunnel sighed. "I warned you, didn't I? Married men who play with fire always get burned." Ade lowered his head. "I made a mistake. I want to stop, but she won't let go." Kunnel leaned closer. "You gave her hope. Now she believes she owns you. You must end it before she destroys your peace." That night, Ade tried to call Zainab. When she answered, her voice was cold. "What do you want?" she asked. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Zainab, I think we should stop seeing each other. It's not right. I can't keep doing this." There was a long silence, then she laughed bitterly. "You think you can just walk away? After everything you told me? After all you promised?" Ade rubbed his forehead. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, let's both move on." Zainab's tone changed. "You're not leaving me. If I can't have you, nobody will." She hung up. Ade sat there in shock. He knew then that things had gone too far. The next day, Zainab showed up at his home area. She didn't knock or shout, she just stood across the street, watching his gate. A neighbor saw her and mentioned it to Beezy later that evening. "I saw a young lady outside your house today," the neighbor said. "She looked like she was waiting for someone." Beezy smiled faintly and said, "Thank you. I'll tell my husband." That night, Beezy looked at Ade and said gently, "Be careful, my husband. Not everyone who smiles at you means well." Her words struck him deeply. He couldn't sleep that night. Days passed, and the pressure around Ade began to feel heavier. Zainab called him late at night, sometimes crying, sometimes shouting. At work, she left small gifts at his desk. His colleagues began to whisper. His boss called him one morning and said, "Ade, I've heard things. You must handle your personal matters before they affect your business." Ashamed, Ade promised to fix it. He drove to see Zainab that evening, ready to end it once and for all. She opened the door and looked at him with red eyes. "So this is it?" she asked. "You'll go back to your wife and forget me?" Ade sighed. "Zainab, please. I don't want to hurt you. But this can't continue." She stepped closer. "You think she loves you more than I do? You think she understands you?" Her voice trembled. "I gave up everything for you." He shook his head. "You deserve someone who can love you freely, not in secret." He walked away before she could answer. That night, Zainab sat alone in her small room. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She felt used, rejected, and angry. But inside her anger was pain, the pain of realizing that love built on lies never lasts. Beezy, on the other hand, found peace in her silence. She kept her calm smile and continued her prayers. She knew the truth would reveal itself soon. And deep in his heart, Ade knew he had reached a point of no return. The life he once controlled was slowly slipping away, and he could feel the storm building. Zainab had not smiled for weeks. Her room felt empty, and her phone, once filled with AIDS messages, now stayed silent. She tried to distract herself by working longer hours at the boutique, but every customer's laughter reminded her of how lonely she had become. She hated how she had changed, from a confident young woman to someone who waited by the phone for a man who no longer cared. One Saturday morning, she decided to step out and clear her mind. The sun was bright, and the streets were busy with people going to the market. Zainab walked slowly through the stalls, stopping to buy some fruit. She noticed a small photography booth near the corner. A man stood behind the camera, taking pictures of children and families. He had a gentle smile and calm eyes. His clothes were simple, a white shirt and faded jeans, but he looked neat and peaceful. When a little girl refused to smile for the camera, the man crouched down and made funny faces until she laughed. Zainab couldn't help but smile too. She stood watching for a while, and when the girl's mother left, the man looked up and noticed her. "Good morning, madam," he said kindly. "Would you like a picture too?" Zainab laughed softly. "No, I just came to watch. You're good with people." He smiled. "Thank you. I'm Malik. Photography is not just about pictures. It's about stories. Every face has one." Zainab liked the way he spoke, calm, respectful, without trying to impress. "I'm Zainab," she said, offering a small smile. "Nice to meet you, Zainab," Malik said, adjusting his camera. "If you ever want a photo, I'll give you a discount." She chuckled. "I'll think about it." That small meeting stayed in her mind longer than she expected. There was something peaceful about Malik, something that made her feel seen, not for her looks but for who she was. The following weekend, she passed by the same spot again. Malik was there, arranging his camera. He smiled when he saw her. "You came back. I was beginning to think I scared you away." Zainab laughed. "I just came to the market. I didn't plan to stop." "Then let me take one picture," he said. "No charge. Just a gift." She hesitated but agreed. He adjusted the lens, asked her to look slightly to the side, and said softly, "Perfect. Don't smile if you don't feel like it. Just be yourself." After taking the picture, he showed it to her. Zainab was surprised. The woman in the photo looked calm but thoughtful, like someone carrying a story inside. "You see," Malik said, "that's strength. Sometimes, we don't even know we have it." Zainab looked at him for a moment, unsure how to respond. She hadn't heard words like that in a long time, words that lifted her instead of flattering her. Over the next few weeks, she found herself visiting Malik's booth often. They talked about life, work, and dreams. He told her how he started photography after losing his job in a printing shop. "I used to think my life was over," he said, "but then I realized every ending is a chance to start again." Zainab nodded quietly. "I wish I could start again too," she said. Malik looked at her. "You can. Everyone can. The question is, what do you really want to start?" His words stayed with her. That night, Zainab sat by her window and thought about her life. She remembered the first time she met Ade, how charming he was, how much she wanted to be loved. But now, she saw how much of herself she had lost trying to hold on to him. The next day, she deleted all of Ade's old messages and pictures. Her hands shook as she pressed delete, but afterward, she felt lighter. At work, she began focusing on her customers again. She smiled more and even helped her boss organize a small fashion display. Her colleagues noticed the change. "Zainab, you look different," one said. "You're glowing again." She laughed softly. "Maybe I'm just tired of being sad." Malik continued to stop by the boutique occasionally. Sometimes he brought her photos he had taken of the city, children playing in the rain, an old man fixing his bicycle, a mother carrying her baby on her back. Each photo had meaning. He once told her, "Life is like a picture. You can't see the beauty until you stop trying to control it." Zainab smiled at that. "You talk like a teacher." He laughed. "Maybe I am. Life taught me everything I know." One afternoon, they sat in a quiet park, sharing roasted corn from a street vendor. Malik told her about his younger sister, who had dropped out of school but later went back after years of struggle. She didn't give up, he said proudly. Sometimes we fall, but falling doesn't mean we're finished. Zainab looked down at the corn in her hand. I fell hard, she said softly. I made choices I'm not proud of. Malik looked at her, his voice calm. We've all made mistakes, Zainab. The question is, what do you do after? You can either live in the past or learn from it. For the first time in a long while, Zainab felt hope. Malik never asked her about Ade, but she could tell he knew she was healing from something painful. His silence was kind, not curious. As weeks turned into months, they became close friends. Malik would sometimes take her to local art shows or small community events. Zainab began to see life beyond gifts, lies, and secrets. She realized that love was not supposed to make you hide, it was supposed to help you grow. One day, while walking home, she saw Ade's car parked near her street. Her heart jumped. He stepped out and looked nervous. Zainab, he said, can we talk? She looked at him calmly. There's nothing left to talk about. He tried to smile. I've missed you. Zainab shook her head. You missed control, not me. You had your chance. Ade sighed and said, I made mistakes. I just wanted to check on you. She smiled faintly. I'm fine. Really? You should go home. He looked surprised by her calmness. She wasn't angry, she wasn't begging, she was free. He nodded slowly and left. As his car drove away, Zainab felt something close in her heart, a chapter ending peacefully. That evening, she went to see Malik at the park. He was sitting under a tree, editing photos on his laptop. She sat beside him quietly. He looked up and smiled. You look peaceful today. She nodded. I saw someone from my past. But I realized I don't belong there anymore. Malik smiled gently. That means you've grown. They sat together, watching the sunset turn the sky orange and gold. Zainab felt calm, not because she had found someone new, but because she had found herself again. For the first time, she didn't need anyone to complete her. Malik had shown her respect, but more importantly, he had reminded her of her worth. That night, as she lay in bed, Zainab whispered a small prayer, not for love, not for wealth, but for peace. And in that quiet moment, she knew she had finally begun her new story. It was a bright Monday morning in Abuja when everything changed. Ade woke up to a phone full of missed calls and messages. At first, he thought it was about work, but when he opened his social media, his heart dropped. There, on almost every page, was a picture of him and Zainab, sitting close together in a restaurant, smiling at each other like lovers. Someone had taken the photo weeks ago, and now it was everywhere. He froze. The caption under the picture read, "Respected businessman caught with side chick." Within hours, the photo had spread through WhatsApp groups, Facebook posts, and gossip blogs. People were commenting, laughing, judging. Ade's hands shook as he scrolled. His phone kept ringing, but he couldn't answer. At home, Beezy was in the kitchen when a message from her friend arrived. She opened it and saw the same picture. For a few moments, she couldn't breathe. Her chest felt heavy, but she didn't scream. She sat down quietly and stared at the image. Her husband, the man she had trusted for years, was sitting with another woman, looking comfortable and happy. When Ade came home that evening, Beezy didn't shout or cry. She simply placed her phone on the table and said, "So, this is what you've been doing while I was praying for you." Ade opened his mouth but couldn't find any words. "Beezy, it's not what it looks like," he said weakly. She looked at him calmly. "Then tell me what it is." He lowered his head. There was nothing left to explain. The truth was clear. For days, their home was silent. The children noticed that their mother didn't talk much, and their father stayed out longer than usual. Beezy spent her evenings praying, not for her marriage to be saved, but for strength to endure what was already broken. At Ade's office, things got worse. His business partners called for a meeting. One of them said bluntly, "Ade, this kind of scandal is bad for our image. Clients are asking questions." Ade could only nod. His reputation, which he had built for years, was now damaged. Meanwhile, Zainab was also facing the storm. Her picture with Ade was everywhere, and people had started calling her names. Some customers stopped coming to the boutique where she worked. Her boss, worried about gossip, called her into the office. "Zainab," she said softly, "maybe you should take a break for now. You know how people talk." Zainab left the office quietly. On the street, people whispered as she walked by. She felt like the whole world was laughing at her. That evening, she sat in her room, scrolling through the comments. Some were cruel, some mocking. She turned off her phone and cried. When Malik came by the next day and found her door locked, he knocked gently. "Zainab, it's me," he said. She didn't answer at first. He waited for a while, then said again, "I just came to see if you're all right." Finally, she opened the door. Her eyes were red and tired. "Why are you here?" she asked quietly. Malik looked at her with calm eyes. "Because I care," he said simply. She shook her head. "Everyone hates me now. You should too." He smiled faintly. "I don't hate people for making mistakes. I only hate when they stop learning from them." His words broke something in her. Tears filled her eyes again. "I was stupid," she said. "I thought he loved me. I thought I was special." Malik handed her a handkerchief. "You were looking for love in the wrong place. That doesn't make you worthless." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the city was loud, but inside her small room, it was quiet, painfully quiet. Over the next few days, Malik kept checking on her. He brought her food when she refused to go out, encouraged her to walk outside for fresh air, and told her stories of people who had faced shame and still rebuilt their lives. Slowly, Zainab began to breathe again. One evening, they went to a nearby park to sit by the lake. The air was cool, and the sky was full of orange light. Zainab said softly, "I wish I could erase my name from the internet." Malik smiled gently. "You can't erase the past, but you can write a better future." She looked at him and nodded. For the first time since the scandal broke, she felt a small spark of hope. Back at Aid's house, the tension grew heavier each day. His neighbors whispered. His business slowed down. Even his closest friends began to avoid him. Beezy, though calm, started packing her things. One evening, she told him quietly, "I'm taking the children to my mother's for a while." Ade tried to stop her. "Beezy, please. Don't leave me." She looked at him with sad eyes. "You left me long before I packed my bags," she said. "Now I just need peace." When she left, Ade sat alone in the living room. The walls felt empty, the silence too loud. For the first time, he truly understood the weight of his choices. Days turned into weeks. The scandal slowly faded from social media, replaced by new gossip. But the damage had already been done. Zainab still faced stares whenever she went out, but she no longer hid. Malik's friendship had given her strength to face people with her head held high. One afternoon, she went to Malik's small studio. He was editing photos on his laptop. She smiled and said, "I want to work." He looked up. "Work?" "Yes," she said. "Teach me photography. I want to learn something new." Malik smiled warmly. "Then we'll start today." Over the next months, she became his assistant, helping with photo shoots, organizing clients, and even taking pictures herself. Her hands shook at first, but Malik guided her patiently. "Don't rush," he would say. "Good pictures come from calm hearts." Zainab started seeing beauty again, in faces, in streets, in small things. She learned to find peace in quiet moments instead of noise. People began to notice her work and praise her skill. Slowly, the shame that once followed her turned into respect. One evening, as they walked home from an event, Malik said, "You've come a long way, Zainab." She smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." He shook his head. "You did it yourself. I only reminded you of who you were." She laughed softly. "Maybe. But I'm still grateful." Back in his house, Ade sat alone, staring at a family photo on the wall. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Beezy. She had sent a picture of their children smiling. At the bottom, she wrote, "We are fine. I hope you are too." Ade stared at the message for a long time. He knew she was being kind, but he also knew she wasn't coming back soon. He put the phone down and sighed deeply. Zainab, on the other hand, felt peace returning to her life. She had lost much, but she had also gained something important: self-respect. She now knew that love was not supposed to be secret or painful. It was supposed to make you better. Malik continued to be her quiet support, but he never rushed her into anything. Their bond grew naturally, built on honesty and kindness. As time passed, the memory of the scandal faded like an old photograph. What remained was a lesson, that truth always finds a way to rise, and that sometimes the end of one story is the start of another. That night, as the city lights flickered outside her window, Zainab whispered softly, "I am free." And for the first time, she truly meant it. Months passed, and life began to settle again. The noise, the gossip, the shame, all of it slowly faded into the background like an old dream. The world had moved on, and so had Zainab. She had opened a small boutique in a quiet part of town. The shop wasn't big, but it was bright and warm. She sold handmade dresses, jewelry, and bags. Each piece she made carried a bit of her story: strength, growth, and peace. Every morning, she unlocked the door, swept the floor, and arranged the clothes neatly on the racks. Sometimes she played soft music as she worked. Her customers liked her calm and polite nature. Some came just to talk because they found comfort in her words. Zainab had changed. She no longer looked for attention or expensive gifts. She found joy in simple things: a satisfied customer, a kind smile, a quiet evening. Malik often stopped by after finishing his photography work. He would help her take pictures of the new clothes for her boutique's page. They laughed easily together, comfortable in each other's company. Malik never spoke about love or promises. He simply supported her, and that was enough. One afternoon, as they were arranging new items, Malik looked at her and said, "You seem happy these days." Zainab smiled softly. "I am. I finally feel like myself again." He nodded. "Peace looks good on you." She laughed gently. Peace took a long time to find. Sometimes, when Zainab sat alone after closing the shop, her mind wandered to her past, to Ade, to the mistakes she made, to the pain she caused herself and others. But she no longer felt anger or shame. She felt understanding. She realized that she had been chasing love that was never truly hers. She had tried to build happiness from someone else's pain, and it had only broken her. But that chapter of her life had also led her to grow, to learn, to become a better person. On the other side of town, Ade's life was slowly finding order again. After months of silence, Beezy had agreed to speak to him. She didn't shout or insult him. She simply asked, "Have you learned your lesson?" Ade bowed his head. "Yes," he said quietly. "I was foolish. I let greed and pride blind me. I almost lost everything." Beezy nodded slowly. "Almost," she said. "But not yet. You can still rebuild if you mean it." He promised her that he would change, not with words but with actions. He started spending more time with his family, helping the children with their homework, cooking dinner on weekends, and being open about his work. It was not easy. Trust once broken doesn't heal in a day. But Beezy watched his efforts and began to believe again, little by little. In business, Ade had lost some of his partners, but he worked hard to rebuild his name. He became humbler, more patient, and more grateful. The scandal had taught him that respect takes years to earn but only a moment to lose. One day, while shopping for fabric for Beezy, he passed by a street and stopped suddenly. Across the road, he saw Zainab's boutique. For a moment, he just stood there, unsure if he should go in. After a short pause, he crossed the road and entered quietly. Zainab looked up and froze for a moment when she saw him. The silence between them was heavy, but not bitter. "Ade," she said softly. "It's been a while." He nodded. "Yes, it has." He looked around the shop. "You did well for yourself." She smiled faintly. "I'm trying. This shop gives me peace." He nodded again, then said quietly, "I came to say thank you." She looked surprised. "Thank you? For what?" "For letting go," he said. "If you hadn't, I might never have seen what I was losing. I hurt many people, including you." "I'm sorry." Zainab was quiet for a while. Then she said, "We both made mistakes, Ade. I was looking for love in the wrong place. Maybe it had to happen for both of us to learn." He smiled sadly. "I hope you're happy now." "I am," she said honestly. "And I hope you are too." He nodded. "I'm getting there." They stood quietly for a moment, the past between them like an old scar, healed but not forgotten. Then Ade said, "Take care of yourself, Zainab," and left the shop. She watched him walk away, not with pain or regret, but with calm acceptance. That evening, Malik came by and noticed she was quieter than usual. "You're thinking," he said with a smile. Zainab nodded. "I saw Ade today. He came by the shop." Malik raised his eyebrows but said nothing. "I didn't feel angry or sad," she continued. "Just peaceful. Like that part of my life finally ended the way it should." Malik smiled gently. "That means you've healed." She looked at him and said, "I think so. I finally learned what love really means." He asked softly, "And what does it mean?" She smiled. "It's not about taking or chasing. It's about giving and growing. It's about peace, not pain." Malik nodded. "Then you've learned the most important lesson." Over the next months, Zainab's boutique grew. She hired 2 young women to help her, girls who reminded her of herself years ago, full of dreams and fears. She often told them, "Know your worth. Don't let anyone buy your heart with sweet words and empty gifts." They listened carefully, admiring her strength and grace. One afternoon, as she closed the shop, Malik arrived with a camera. "Let's take a picture," he said. She laughed. "Of what?" "Of your new beginning," he said. "You've earned it." She smiled and stood by the door of her shop. He lifted the camera and said, "Don't pose. Just be you." The camera clicked. Malik showed her the photo, and she smiled. "That's me," she said softly. "Yes," Malik said. "That's the woman who found peace." They walked home together under the fading evening light, talking and laughing. Zainab didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She was strong. She was free. Far away, Ade sat on his balcony beside Bizi, watching their children play. He turned to his wife and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Bizi smiled quietly. "We all make mistakes, Ade. What matters is that we learn and grow." He nodded. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I have." That night, the sky over Abuja was clear, filled with stars. Each one seemed to tell a story, of failure, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Zainab sat by her window, looking at the same stars. She whispered softly, "I'm no longer the woman I was. I'm better now." And deep inside, she knew it was true. She had found peace, not through love from someone else, but through love for herself. Real love, she now understood, was never about possession. It was about purpose. It was not about taking someone's place, it was about finding your own.